Welcome to Butcherbird Presents. And I am not Louis Reyes, and this is not Stephen Calcote.
No.
We have, however, turned the tables. We're putting Louis Reyes in the interviewee seat, and I, Stephen Calcote, am going to interview him this week. We're both partners here at Butcherbird. Full disclosure, we've worked together more than 10 years, but it's about time we get this storyteller telling a little bit about his world.
And Stephen normally produces this show, and he's down here. I'm sure that's anxious.
No, I'm not anxious at all. I was actually mentioning that it's the first time I've done the show without headphones on, monitoring everything.
Right.
So that's the one adjustment. Well, here's why I wanted to share the amazing Louis Reyes with you guys for this show. We started Butcherbird Presents as a lab for going live and using the incredible new tools of Facebook and YouTube to actually do what used to only be possible for multi-million-dollar productions. We started Facebook Live show as well in order to talk about the people that we know and love in the digital space who are effectively creating stories using the latest technology.
Yeah.
And I think we'd actually be very remiss not to feature some of the things that Louis has done. So with no further ado, give us a little bit of setup, since you haven't talked about it much as an interviewer.
Yeah.
Like, what's your background in this space? Where do you come from as a creator?
Yeah, well, I came to digital content almost not accidentally, but as a kind of a consequence of just being interested in material in the digital space. And I think that was fostered at Tokyopop, which is where we worked together for a little while. Tokyopop was a publishing company doing manga and manga adaptations of work. So I did a Star Trek manga and a Battlestar Galactica manga, a CSI manga.
And what's interesting about all those is you were taking properties that had traditionally been in one space and transforming them for a new space.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and trying to reach a different audience because of that. And then we were also doing original manga, developing. We had Felipe Smith here a couple episodes back, and he was one of our original manga creators. But what we were doing is a lot of work for the website, right? And at that point, the website, this was 2007, 2008, websites were obviously useful, but no one was really figuring out how to turn them into a destination. There were a few websites that were kind of more of a artist collective destination, and I think Tokyopop wanted to get on that bandwagon, and so we started talking about what we can do in that digital space. I mean, there was the easy part where we could put the mangas and the comics up online, and then of course after I left Tokyopop, Jason Milligan, another one of our partners, even took that further and started developing actual what he called iManga, or right, iManga?
Yeah, it was it was interactive. Well, not truly interactive manga. It was basically taking manga and making them into motion comics. And I think the logical evolution of that could have very well been some kind of interactivity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that was great. And some of the work he did with that is fantastic. There's a Riding Shotgun kind of animated manga online that you can look up. That's really, really cool. I think it's probably also on Jason's various sites. But what it did is it started getting to this idea that wow, you could create something and you immediately have a platform for it. And if you can get an audience for that platform, well, you don't have to create a TV show or a movie or something else.
And of course, this is the first time you and I intersected, where I was the director of an animated adaptation of a manga that you edited called Midnight Opera.
Midnight Opera, yeah. Good old Hanzo out of Germany.
Let's fast forward a little bit. I want to let everyone out there in Facebook Live world know that you've got a really powerful pedigree as well that I think personally informs all of your work, in that you have deep roots in the theater. You were part of a Shakespeare club at UCLA.
Right, yeah.
You reviewed plays, was it for 10 years for the LA Weekly?
Yeah, from like 1998 to 2008.
So I want to queue up for what's going to be our first little share with our Facebook Live audience out there, which is armed with this really powerful theater secret weapon, if you will, and you're deeply immersed in converting IP from one form into another using the power of digital. You enter with that background into Nexon.
Yeah. So I took the Tokyopop background, I took the theater background, all that stuff. I started at Nexon actually as an actual game producer, which was basically poring over spreadsheets and sort of developing mechanics in games and things like that. It was definitely 180 degrees from where I was at Tokyopop developing more entertainment content. But while I was there was a very progressive head of marketing named Min Kim, and he had already bought 2 editing bays, and but no one was using them. And so I got this idea. Well,
A creative vacuum that must be filled.
yeah, exactly. I feel like, so if we started making content, that would be cool. And then at the same time, they started creating what eventually was abandoned, but it was a gaming hub, like Steam or something like that, but just for Nexon games.
And for those of you who don't know, Nexon is one of the world's largest game makers.
Absolutely, yeah.
They have, was it more than
Oh God, yeah.
hundreds of millions of users worldwide?
I would say it's actually in the billions.
Really?
Because
Okay.
if you count all of Asia and then South
And we're talking
America,
MapleStory, Combat
yeah,
Arms, and a host
absolutely.
of really what created the free-to-play genre,
Yeah,
right?
Nexon basically invented free to play. So
So I wanted to
know,
give that
you're welcome.
context because here you are, this really fecund creative mind, and you drop into that, and no surprise to me knowing your background, you say, wow, looking around, what if we took this and extended it?
yeah. Basically, it was kind of, we already have an audience for the games. They're already going to a website, right? So the idea is the only reason they go into the website now is to play the game. What if we gave them more reasons to stay? What if we gave them a TV show or like an entertainment show that they could watch and follow? I was going to say that hub that they were talking about was called Block Party, and everybody's going to come to it and they can access all the games from there. So initially, what I came up with was this thing called the Block Party Blabberbox, and the Blabberbox was a variety show that could be housed on this Block Party hub that people could watch, and if they watched it for a half hour, they'd be able to get all the updates from all the games, these little funny sketches, episodes of like live action series or animated series, and it would be this kind of nice little thing. Well, Block Party went away, but Blabberbox did not go away. We actually ended up doing 6 episodes of Blabberbox, and the nice thing about it is that the entertainment itself was being developed in direct response to the feedback we got online.
Which actually is the topic of today. If there's a subheading under being effective in the digital space as a storyteller, today's conversation is really about how do you involve the audience as part of that creative engine. And I'll say a couple of things before we cue up a clip and give you an idea at what this was all about. It's important to note this is the first time actually that Butcherbird really came together as an entity professionally.
Yeah,
and that you
I was your
challenged
first client.
The first client, and then as often happens, clients become a part of the family. The challenge for us was, here is this great collection of characters that people already love,
Yeah.
and stories, and Nexon personalities themselves. You threw down an array of scripts, and then you said, hey, Butcherbird team, bring everything to life.
Yeah.
But I want to start with the Blabberbox reference point, which had you as a host.
Yes.
Yes, which is now a long tradition.
Yeah, I
So
guess.
let's take a look at what that was. This is Blabberbox for Nexon, hosted by
And
Lewis.
this is episode 2. So
episode
this is the
2.
second episode.
Just
of
in case you
Blabberbox.
feel lost.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a direct reference to episode 1 in it.
All right, very good. Let's take a look.
Hey, Nexon fans. Welcome to the next Blabberbox. Thanks a lot for the comments on the first one.
Hey man, what are you doing?
Oh, hey, man. I'm just introducing the show.
You look like a wreck.
What's the point anymore?
Dude, everybody loved the first episode. We got like 70,000 views on the first day and 90% like rating on YouTube. We're doing really well.
Nick!
Good job, Nexon. I think you need a new host, though. Frodo isn't cutting it for me.
They think I look like a hobbit.
Dude, that's just a matter of style.
Ah, my junk!
So yeah, I mean, what was really exciting about there is that we did an episode 1, and the episode 1, I think, topped out at like 200,000 views, which again is relatively small in the YouTube space for like, but considering we didn't push this or advertise it at all, it was really just kind of placed on various Nexon sites and sort of left to anybody who wanted to click on it. We got nearly 200,000 views.
Now, we talked about before the show today that there's training that's happened for the online audience and that they know how to consume this type of content by instinct. But when you first put this out, you were involved in letting the audience know that they would have a direct impact
Yeah.
on what happened in the show.
And I was taking my cue from a lot of like YouTube celebrities that were kind of blossoming at the time. I mean, now they're big business, but before they weren't necessarily big business. But you had a bunch of YouTube celebrities who are now making their living off of just monetizing their YouTube presence. So I knew there was an audience there. I knew that audience could react. And so what we did specifically for the content for episode 2, which you just saw the opening of, and you saw Min Kim there, our very progressive marketing head, who was then followed up by Brad Heisey, who's another very progressive marketing head, so I want to give props to them. And we got a comment about me looking like Frodo.
Right, and so that inspired you to take it there. There are a couple of things that I think were really successful here. You didn't have a big budget, so you embraced being on the Nexon campus itself.
Yeah.
Which there was a little bit of magic and mystery about, where fans wanted to see more of where these games were managed and created and developed. Min Kim is a worldwide superstar in the game development arena. You had become a personality as well, and so it was really a great lesson on use what you have available.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then write around that.
And then all the other content for the show was sort of developed in that same way. We had a live action series called Testers, which was basically a kind of a dramedy about game testers, right? So we used the Nexon location. They were testing MapleStory. Stephen, you directed all the episodes. And that was part of Blabberbox. We also did a animated series called New Leaf Saga. We did several other kind of
But
like
this was
sketches
all about basically taking what fans have been excited about and saying, let's extend the properties they're excited about.
Exactly, and I also went to the game teams themselves to find out what that is, because they were talking to fans all the time, right? And so what I was also trying to do, in addition to just kind of flexing our own creative muscles, was to ask the game teams to get them involved. So a lot of the things you saw written, either the germ of the idea came from the game teams themselves, who had been in conversations with the fans. And then, of course, I would help develop them. So we almost had like an entire company as a writer's room.
Got it.
Because I was able to go to all of them. And that's why I think the content is so
But
fun.
again, we talked to a lot of young filmmakers here who are just getting started, new filmmakers, I should say. And that's the number one lesson we try to impart is don't write the big budget thing you don't have access to.
Exactly, yeah.
Take
yeah.
a look around you. What do I have access to? And I love it. You created a writer's room out of your game developers. You actually got them to write and star, etc. Well, let's keep moving the conversation forward. My number one danger today is to turn this into a 3-hour show.
Absolutely.
In that, let's get the audience involved. Let's see what they want mindset. You said Rants and Raves seemed like it hit, so let's make a Rants and Raves.
So the Rants and Raves was already a concept online. What we did is we just made a show of it, right? So we grabbed 3 rants from the social media space and 3 raves from the social media space, and then we presented them. Now, Nick, who you saw as the actor in that last thing, he became this ongoing joke. He became the actor. So every time someone had a rant or rave, we just have the actor read their rant or rave, and then we respond to it. It was
All right,
fun.
well, let's take a look at Rants and Raves and see what was actually involved there.
All right, we'd like to welcome back Community Manager Daniel Chin for another Rants and Raves. Let's see what the next one brings.
No offense, but I like how you have time to make videos, yet you do nothing about the hackers and combat arms.
You know what, Daniel? He might be right. I mean, we both have advanced degrees in computer engineering. We should probably just do something about the hackers.
Let's roll.
All right.
Good stuff.
So one of my favorite parts of that is that you never shied away from what felt like criticism head on.
Yeah. I mean, like that line at the end. I mean, a lot of people, we got a lot of criticism for, oh my God, you're doing all these other things, but you should be fixing the game. As if everybody in the company was committed to fixing the technical problems of the game. But
Everyone from accounting to marketing to, right, yeah.
So the company line was to never mention that. The company line was to
Never
just
mention problems.
Never mention problems. And that always frustrated, I know, the social media team who I work with closely. And I'm like, well, why? Why can't you just sort of tackle these things head on? You know, as long as you're not criticizing or defending yourself, you know, if you just kind of play around with it and have fun with it. There were plenty of fans who also would think that was funny, you know, in addition to, there are always going to be haters, so you just don't avoid it. We had a sketch we did in which we cast an actress as one of the characters from Combat Arms, and one of the comments we got from the social media was, "Oh my God, why did you cast someone that looks like Pooh?" And the actress read this and was like, "What? I look like Pooh?" And then we made a comment about it in the next, you know, I had her on and I was like, "Hey, so do you feel like Pooh?" She's like, "No, I don't really feel like Pooh."
Well, now flash forward, that's great. Flash forward to current day and actors reading their worst tweets sent to them.
Yeah.
That's an incredible thing. And it's, you have a choice. You can either be aware of the audience out there and have fun with it,
Yeah.
or pretend they don't exist. And we're no longer in a world where the audience doesn't exist.
And don't berate them, and don't. I think that's the thing. Is it is kind of a conversation. As long as you're clever about it, there are going to be people out there to appreciate being clever. So
Absolutely. All right, so at the time you did Nexon, which is more than 5 years ago now, it was really
7 years ago.
7 years ago. Well, that's important actually for this conversation because it was really unusual then to involve a big corporate audience. It was being done,
Yeah.
but to do it in the way that you were doing it was ahead of the curve. Now flash forward to current, and we have a big client at Butcherbird named Tilt. They're a huge work untethered with our incredible battery solutions for your mobile devices. That's what makes them really cool. But the reason this circles back around to us at Butcher is we were charged with finding an organic way to tell that story content-wise.
yeah, and they were asking for it. They just didn't know what that would be, right? And so I went in there with 4 or 5 different approaches that they can actually take, and they really like this one approach that actually Jason, our partner, helped me develop, and that is people that are just kind of creatively passionate about something, and then just do a mini documentary on them. And of course, in the background are the Tilt products, and we're implying that because they are active, dynamic people that are out there on the go, and a lot of these people were like outdoors people, so they sort of needed battery solutions. So it actually made perfect sense.
Well, they didn't, but their devices did.
Their devices, yeah. They
Just to be
didn't
clear.
need to plug in a battery to their thigh, no. But the result I was very proud of, and I know that everybody in Butcherbird probably touched it at least once, and we were all very proud of it.
I want to bubble up for our show, which is about being effective in the digital space. What were the essential elements for success? You took a lot of the hard learning you had and you said, let's make sure that there's an affinity audience for what we create. You had done branded content before. We had Jason Milligan, who's actually sitting beyond
Right
that
there,
wall
yeah.
over there, who created this incredible podcast called Go Get Outside, and they're more than 50 episodes now. And he's a canyoneer, and he goes climbing. So he had somebody who's outside, and he actually lives an untethered lifestyle.
And we also knew Aaron Nardi, who knows the BMX space and the extreme sports space. So the people we were able to get between Jason and Aaron, and a few that I threw in there, it was just an incredible array of
But
people.
we worked within our weight class, so to speak, and that we knew who we had access to and what we could pull off as, in this case, a road show using internal resources. And we said, okay, what would a proposal be around that? And then Tilt said, we really like this untethered,
yeah.
living off the grid and still being effective even though when you're off the grid.
This was the My Passion thing. The off the grid thing was another show that Jason pitched them in the room, which was an excuse for him to go on a 7-week road trip. And
You know, I've always
great.
conflated the two.
Yeah,
but
they're
the
two
thinking is the
shows.
same. So we're going to look at My Passion right now.
We're going to look at My Passion, which is the mini documentaries about creatives. But there is also another show that people should definitely check out called Untethered on the Road, and is a 7-episode series with Jason actually traveling. But that's another.
So
We're going to watch My Passion.
what I just said about My Passion, or what I just said about Untethered, still applies to My Passion.
Absolutely.
Is it's all people that we were at least 1 degree, if not
Yeah,
the same
absolutely,
person
yeah.
separated from, and then we celebrated them. So let's take a look.
There's such a big difference between what people think they're capable of and what people can actually do.
If they don't see this, if they don't know it exists, they're not going to want to protect it.
You're thinking of all of these different things that sort of come together to make the perfect image.
And that feeling is absolutely unreal.
People think that we're crazy. And that's really not the case. You don't have to travel to experience something beautiful. I promise it's in your backyard.
Absolutely fulfills the promise. The thing bringing us back to today's conversation about this particular show is that your desire to get the audience involved, it sort of collapses completely here, and that the people we featured are the audience. We said these are people who would be great using the product. Let's feature those people themselves. It seems like almost the ultimate realization of get the audience
and it's
involved.
aspirational, right? We're aiming at people who want to be those people, right? Who want to be the bass jumpers of the world, or the DJs of the world, or the BMX bikers of the world, we're showing them, we're giving them a glimpse into their life that is at once dynamic, aspirational, and fun. So yeah, it was a great series.
I want to just take a quick offshoot here. I think, given that you and I are most passionate about narrative projects that we've created out of whole cloth, we are also neither of us born from imminent wealth, or infinite wealth rather, or imminent wealth. And we are constantly looking for projects that will put food on the table. I am always heartened when we have projects that serve both worlds. The need to be creative, the need to put food on the table, but ones like this series, which really celebrated people that we thought were worth celebrating. And something else we were talking about before the break, having a single sponsor for content really harkens back to the dawn of television, right? Where you had one brand say, we're going to get some writers together and we're going to sponsor a story here. In those days, in the 50s, let's say, it maybe was a play or a completely original series. And while this is still featuring the products, I felt like we're in this really great time where we can actually get a brand involved telling great stories, as long as we push them in that direction.
Yeah, and I mean that was the idea about Nexon. That was the idea behind Tilt, and it's something we're really trying to push out there. And again, I mean, now there's also so many different ways to tell something. We're just moving along, but talking about virtual reality and creating those same things in virtual reality. I mean, when we got into that about 2 years ago, and I feel like it's a whole new way to sort of sponsor content, right?
Absolutely. And again, on the how do you get the audience involved? In short, this could be its own week-long series. VR is the ultimate in-depth captive audience experience, right?
Yeah, once you get people actually in there.
Yeah, once you get people in there.
They don't tend to go away once you get them in there. It's hard getting them in there.
So one thing that you have done since the beginning of our work with VR is you have challenged the old school narrative. You have been the champion of not just putting movie in a VR headset.
Right, yeah.
What is VR that makes it different than a television or a movie experience or a novel experience or a video game?
Right. The linear narrative is limiting, and that you have to think of other ways to sort of shape your narrative to be able to create effective, immersive experiences. That if you're forcing your audience to move from point A to point B with their eyes, you're not writing for the immersive space, and you're not creating for the immersive space. And I forgot exactly what VR is.
We're actually going to show the smell today,
Oh,
right?
okay, great. Yeah.
So you actually encouraged us to seize an opportunity. We had just designed a custom VR rig because there weren't a lot of great options out there.
Stephen designed this custom VR
Well,
rig.
the reason it came about is because as filmmakers, we wanted something that would allow us to control f-stop and all the things that we would normally be able to control. So you got in contact, or a director got in contact with you. They had a concept to cover
Gil
the
Kenan,
last days of the smell.
Yeah, Gil
downtown.
Kenan, he directed Monster House, and he directed the remake of Poltergeist, and I ran into him at a VR event. Yeah.
And so you challenged us at Butcherbird to realize a documentary in a way that hadn't been done before with the VR experience. And so I just want to give viewers a hopelessly inadequate look at it, since this is not going to be in VR goggles, but it'll at least put it in context for you. So let's take a quick look at that smell clip. So obviously that was in the equirectangular
Equirectangular,
format, and if you had been in the goggles, I will tell you from experience, what you would have felt like is that you were in the center of that room. So orient us a little bit from an audience perspective of what you wanted to accomplish there.
Well, basically so instead of doing a documentary where you're being led by a narrator, they're showing you specifically what's going on, we could have done that. We could have done, hey, listen, here are 4 punk bands or 5 punk bands that played in the Smell, and here's the Smell bathroom, which is legendary. We didn't have a VO, and we didn't put everybody just on their stage. We shot in 5 different parts of the Smell and just put a band right there. So that was in the lobby. The next one was an EDM artist in the bathroom. The next was a band on stage. The next was a band backstage. And then we were on Main Street, 2 blocks down from the police station, 3 takes at full volume, never got stopped, which is fantastic. But these were
actually, I never told you this, the LAPD, as I was watching the last take, somebody came up afterwards like, oh, cool, what is this? So,
oh, that's fun.
you know, in Los Angeles, you'll often have LAPD get excited about
Yeah.
filming just to see what's going on.
Yeah, and I feel like it ended up being very effective. Now, it was sloppy. It was punk rock because basically all the rules of VR, like, hey, you got to keep people more than 4 feet away. You can't have people walking past the scenes. Well, that director blew all that out of the water. You see, he had people grab the camera, had people walk past. But we just embraced it, and it ended up being an 8.5-minute experience. We launched it at Mission 356 Mission, which is an art space in downtown LA, very well known for its exhibitions. We ended up getting written up in Vice magazine by name. Butcherbird Studios mentioned in Vice magazine for that piece, and I think what it demonstrated to us was that we had the capabilities and the knowledge to be able to create something that was artistically engaging while at the same time serving a documentary purpose.
But I'll bring it back around to where you asked me to bring things back around at the beginning, which was this came about because you were willing to challenge assumptions about audience relation to content.
Yes.
As a documentary trained filmmaker, in fact, that was my first feature, was a documentary feature. I crave the VO. I crave context.
Yeah.
I crave leading the viewer through my frame.
Yeah, absolutely.
However, you said, Stephen, and I think this is great that you come from the theater because it allows you to really break those assumptions on narrative a little quicker.
Yeah.
You said, let's challenge those audience expectations, and they're going to experience this space not unlike they would if they were in the Smell in person.
Yeah, basically, if you think to yourself, like, if you're showing somebody something that they could have easily read on Wikipedia, then you're not using, especially the VR medium, to its full capacity. So you have to really think to yourself, this is an immersive medium. I'm putting somebody in this space. What does being in this space actually mean? And you don't have to say, hey, the Smell has a crazy looking bathroom. You could put a camera in that bathroom. You don't have to say it's in an alley. You could put a camera in that alley and they could clearly see around them what's going on. More effectively than, say, a framed image. A framed documentary of the Smell would be great as well.
Right, but I had, because we hosted this big event where we had over 100 people who were musical veterans of the Smell, who had been there to see punk shows and other iconic performances through the years. We hosted an event where over 100 people walked through and saw the VR experience. 800 minutes of experience in one evening,
yeah, totally.
right?
Because we had 10 stations, yeah.
And here's, I think, the proof in the pudding. I felt like I was there.
Yeah.
And rarely does a documentary make you feel like you're there. A documentary will often make you feel like you maybe understood what it was like to be there.
Yeah.
But your challenge with VR, I think, really came to fruition, which was we want people to not think about what it was like to be there, but just to be there.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I think it's a really important tool for journalism. I think it's a really important tool for education. I mean, entertainment and narrative, I feel like, God, that's like the 9th priority of VR. I feel like there's so many other dynamic ways of using VR. But of course, and I know we're probably running out of time, the VR experience gives you immersion, but of course there is also live stuff.
Right, and that brings us back to where we started, where I mentioned that you had that deep theater background. You've been doing this really fantastic show called True Crime. I encourage you to check it out. It's been showing at three clubs downtown, not 3 clubs downtown, 3 clubs at, what is it, Santa Monica?
Santa Monica and Vine, just north of Santa Monica on Vine.
So it began as a theatrical experience, live band plus stories of true
plays,
crime
yeah.
vignettes with musical performance, and a really intimate show with audience basically on 3 sides. I took a look at that and I said, Lewis, what if we brought the Facebook Live experience to that show? And so we took that audience challenge, right? And we said, okay, how can we recreate this for Facebook Live? I think it's still an evolving question.
Yeah, and we have been bringing cameras to True Crime since the beginning, just shooting it. Of course, as you might imagine it, a lot of that footage is now living on a drive waiting to be edited. I put together a little sizzle, which I'll put on the Butcher Bird website.
That's the tyranny of post.
It's the tyranny of post. So this last one, I was really happy to go, okay, wait a second. If we have this, we could get about 100 people in that room, and I think we pretty much did. It was packed. So the fact that you were able to set up the live streaming in a packed bar, I was like impressed. But after all was said and done, I noticed that like about 200 people had watched it live on Facebook. So suddenly this audience of 100 was now amplified to 300.
Right, and this is something that we often talk about in production. The hard thing now is not cameras or audio or media or the expense of recording. This is now about being effective in a digital space, right? The hardest thing about production is what the hardest thing always was at its core. Getting together a group of people from different backgrounds into one place at one time with a story to tell. And what's so beautiful about that first Facebook Live experience with True Crime is you had a great series of stories to tell. You'd done that hard work. Why don't we amplify it? I mean, that's, as you said, why don't we amplify it? But I want you guys out there in Facebook Live land to take a look at a quick glimpse of True Crime to see what we're talking about.
She was starbound. If she entered a room and every head did not immediately turn to look, she'd about face right out and do it again. Until everyone responded properly. I wouldn't say we became friends. It was more like I entered her orbit.
Yeah, and that was a slightly fictionalized account of a real actress named Krista Helm who was murdered in 1976. And like most of the true crimes, I'm less interested in the story of the crime itself. I'm less interested in the finding the body and then the police investigators going through and eventually solving the crime. What I like to do with these things is there's the crime, and then the story we're telling is this kind of offshoot, and it might be slightly fictionalized or not. The trueness is the crime itself, but the stories themselves don't have to be true. And for example, one of our pieces, I think in True Crime 3, was the Biggie Smalls murder, which was fantastic, and we had a fantastic actor, Austin Antoine, who performed Biggie, performed the first cop on the scene and the killer. Of course, we've never caught the killer, so this was completely fictionalized, but it was definitely a beautiful kind of moment. I'm very proud of where true crime has developed.
The challenge for us was actually quite large in the room on the day. Behind the scenes, it was very hot. We had equipment fail. We ended up doing about the first hour of a 2-hour show, or about the first 30 minutes of an 1.5-hour show, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But if you want to see the whole thing, it's there on Facebook Live on our feed. If you want to see what we captured for the day. But even though that was a very challenging piece in what we recorded, the vision for why not amplify anything that you thought enough to bring together and preserve that performance, make it last for the future. And this is the key thing I think that you talked about. Take away the pain of all that post work and just have it be a raw experience.
And also, I mean, the true crime itself, turning it into a brand, right? Where, you know, you could see the live show, which has its own excitement. You could see it maybe a Facebook live streaming. We're developing a website that has maybe details of the actual true crime if people are interested in the actual case that these things are inspired by. And then we're developing it into a TV show, an anthology TV show. We had two producers approach us about that. So Butcherbird Studios might very well try to develop that. We're also talking about doing kind of stylized shooting of some of these scripts on our stage. So true crime kind of becomes a whole ecosystem of content that's kind of around this brand that we're really shaping. And again, a lot of people can go out and just do true crime. Right? That's not like, hey, I'm stealing this idea. What I think makes this valuable is the writers involved are all really amazing playwrights and screenwriters in their own right. We had Chris Rossi and Sharon Yablon, and Jeff the Storm, and Shane Easton, and a novelist named Deanne Stillman who wrote for us. The guy who wrote the Black Dahlia Avenger book contributed a piece. So, I mean, it's just an amazing group of people. And again, it's that instruction to them going, don't just tell me the crime, right? Anybody can do that, right? Give me something else. Give me something, you know, that's inspired by it. And that's why some of these things can be utterly surreal. Some of them can be, you know, a victim that we never even met giving a monologue, you know, things like that. So I'm really, and I think that trying to push this in traditional media would be like an uphill battle, right? I mean, any of the stuff is uphill battle. This would be particularly uphill. It's anthology. It's surreal and weird. It doesn't actually give the audience what most of Hollywood thinks it wants, which is the whodunit and the gotcha. But because of these platforms, we can generate an audience. And true crime, we had to turn people away last time.
Which was really exciting. I want to bring this to a close by recapping a few of the key threads here. You have always challenged the first assumptions on adaptation from as long as I've known you. And I think that that's a really useful lesson to take here, is that when you think about how to adapt material, you have more places to adapt it into and hybridize, whether it's a VR experience, a combination theatrical and Facebook Live experience, a branded sponsor who allows you to get it out and you carve it up and then you episodic deliver it. That's really exciting, and I see you continue to challenge assumptions on what it means to adapt in a digital age.
Yeah, what it means to even create content. I think that's what everybody assumed YouTube would be, is just a way to make TV shows and just throw them on YouTube. You say everybody go, I'm going to make a web series, but they were actually just making a TV series and plopping it out on YouTube. And this goes with, it's changing the nature of film and TV, what it means. We were talking about a dialogue with the audience. Well, it opens that up more than it's ever done before. VR has created immersion and challenged our notions of narrative in ways as never have. Live streaming stuff like this has now challenged the kind of material we can create and how it's written.
And although we didn't do it today, we certainly want to do it when we have Reggie Watts in the future. We want to, and we did it for Felipe, we actually took a look at our feed and were able to throw questions out in real time. And that's the other thread that, as you say, has pervaded our entire discussion.
Because no one wants to ask me questions.
Nobody, no, please. Although I think both of our moms would probably have something to ask. But that's pervaded the whole lifetime of creativity. Started in that theater world of what does the audience want from stage, and that's the dovetail with this adaptation. It's one, challenging the notions of what it means to adapt, and two, challenging the notions of what the audience needs and wants and how they'll consume.
I think there are these assumptions of rules, and that is the first lesson to unlearn, right?
Right.
That even television now is breaking its own rules. There were these rules of television 10 years ago, and now I can't even imagine a show. Now I was even talking to someone about Comedy Central and how Comedy Central is now looking for shows that are a little bit more edgy, right? They really played it safe. They were the comedy place because all these other places are kicking their butt with like edgy material.
And that's maybe the most important thing to say about audiences. Unlike maybe 20 years ago, the daily minute by minute drip of new exciting content means we have a worldwide audience who craves the fresh and the new all the time. Like, it is the best time for creators ever in some ways.
Yeah,
really, if
yeah.
you want to get out there in the digital space,
And
there's never been a better time
Yeah.
because there's an audience for whatever wacky medium idea that you might have.
There is, and this is why. And so there's going to be so much more content out there than there ever was. And I know that it can feel overwhelming, but this is where I kind of feel like the power of the curator and the critic becomes even more substantial. I think that, you know, when you could only see the 7 films that the industry wants you to see 20 years ago, the critic was kind of like, it would just either reinforce it or not, right? Where now there's such a din and such a whirlwind of content out there right now that the role of the curatorial voice or the critical voice that sort of helps, you know, get you down to the selection material you might really like, I think is really important. And that's why identifying those people out there, I think we could have a whole show about that. What I feel is a once lost and now re-emerging art. There's that kind of critical voice in this kind of whirlwind of content. But yeah.
So that's episode 12 of Butcherbird Presents. And you saw another great take on what it means to be digital, what it means to be effective as a creative in the digital space. Here's what we're going to keep doing. We're going to keep bringing people on like Reggie Watts, like all of our creators,
Felipe
friends,
Smith,
filmmakers,
yeah,
etc.
all these people.
Who challenge the norms, and hopefully you'll see people who look just like you, who are working on things just like you, or maybe inspire you to try something completely different. Please follow us on our Facebook page. That'll give you automatic updates on when we go live. Please like us. And if you ever want to see the full quality version of the show in HD, you can always go to our YouTube playlist on our Butcherbird Presents. So thank you so much again for joining us. I am really proud that you have enjoyed hearing about our creators, and we will see you very, very soon. Thanks, Liz.
All right, thanks, Stephen.